When we were subtracting in public school, numbers like 52 minus 28, what we did was we saw that the 8 was bigger than the 2. What we had to do was borrow from the previous column. So we borrowed 1 from the 5 to make it a 4, and then we used the 1 over here with the 2 to make it 1 2 base 10 or 12 base 10, subtract the 8 to get the 4 to get our answer of 24. And that's precisely what the concept is that we need to understand to do hex subtraction intuitively. So if we look up here, we have CA minus EF. F is bigger than A. So what we have to do is borrow 1 from the C to make it a B, and then use a 1 with the A. Now the 1A is base 16, so 16 plus 10 is 26, minus 15, as we can see here, is 11, and right away we have our first digit B. Now the problem that we run into at this point is E is bigger than B, and what do we borrow from? Well, if we were adding two 8-bit numbers, got a 9th bit, that's a carry, so the concept is we're going to borrow like we would from the bank. So if we don't have enough money, we borrow. And how much do we borrow? Well, we borrow 1 by setting the carry. What we can do is then use it. So what we owe and what we use are the same or balance out. And so if we borrow $1,000, we use $1,000. So in this case, if we borrow a 1, we're going to use a 1. But this is 1b base 16, which is 16 plus 11, which is 27. And we're subtracting 14 from it, and that gives us a total of 13. So our answer here is DB. And that's all we have to do. Now this intuitive approach can be used even for the hardest subtraction you can imagine. Let's take a look at 0, 0, subtract AB. And right away you can see that B is bigger than 0, and you have to borrow, but the next digit has nothing to borrow because it's also 0. So this is what I call the lazy Joe and the hardworking Bob scenario. So Joe needs to borrow money from Bob, but Bob has no money, so Bob is told by Joe to go to the bank, take out a loan. So Bob makes a loan. There he's borrowing. Now he uses that to have now 1, 0, which is $16. But now Lazy Joe says, Bob, you got $16. So I'm going to borrow 1 from you, and the 16 becomes 15. And now Lazy Joe, who didn't go to the bank, didn't take out a loan or do anything, is the one that ends up with the $16. So our subtraction now becomes 16 minus 11, which is 5. And 15 minus 10, which is 5, and that's your answer, 55 plus a borrow. And you can see that even the hardest possible subtraction is easy to do by just doing this borrowing concept. Now if you want, you can validate this result by doing 2's complement addition, but please remember to do all of those steps, and the last step is to flip the carry.